That's right, everyone. A new intro. I got stuff and things. It is, of course, Burner. This is the Walking Dead Road to Survival, and we're going to talk about Hemorrhage. The past days seen a lot of discussion about the new Maggie, and more specifically, this new specialist skill, Hemorrhage. So, I'm going to add my opinion to the discussion, and it's exactly that. It's my opinion. Time's going to kind of tell what the truth will be, but go ahead, let me hear what you think. You don't have to agree with me as always, but let me kind of put my 2 cents in. I'm going to lay out also an example to hopefully help demonstrate a little bit clearer why I think what I think. So let's get to it. First off, there she is. This is the tune in question. Road to Survival 1 Maggie with Adrenaline Rush, Disorientating Strike, recharge of 45. She deals 500% damage and impair to 1 for 2 turns. All teammates get 60% attack and plus 25 crit for 2. But this is what we're talking about, the Hemorrhage Specialist skill. When this specialist lands a critical hit on an enemy, that enemy suffers extreme bleeding that worsens every turn. It worsens by 150 bleeding damage per turn. There's nothing in here that says it's limited as far as how many turns. So if that person stays alive, eventually it will catch up to them and they will no longer be alive. So personally, I do not think this skill is anything OP that is drastically changing the landscape of the game or top competitive defenses or even raid teams, but mostly defenses is what we're talking about anytime we talk about good tunes. Of course, there's going to be a rare example of like multiple Maggies in a team that complicates that sentiment. But those instances are going to be few and far between. Most of the statements I'm about to make, aren't going to apply to a team with 3 Maggies and a shield and a revive. Like that's not the sort of things I'm talking about. Bleeding is a very unique specialist skill in the fact that it does stack. So if you have an all bleed team together, that's something that gets the waters a little bit murky, but the fact that it sort of takes time to do that much damage is always going to hold it back. Shields and revives are going to stay the key defensive traits for now. I look at this skill sort of similar to the new Indomitable that we saw. It's a quality bonus to have, but in the vast majority, not all, but the vast majority of scenarios, it's not going to change an outcome. Raids that would have been won are still going to be won, and those that were going to be lost are going to be lost. So let's have an example. So this example here by no means is a testament to my rating prowess or, how great I am at rating. It's not. If you've heard my opinion on it, I'm not going to get into it, but if you've heard it, you kind of know my opinion. I'm not going to get into what I feel about rating and rep and rank right now. This is purely an example. I was basically just looking for an opponent in my region that I knew was going to give me a longer than normal raid, so I was looking for a top team up there because I know they're going to give me some challenges. I usually end a raid in about 3 turns. If you watched any of my rating, that's pretty much about the average. Every now and then I'll get something a little bit quicker if I get lucky, but every now and then it's a little bit longer. That being said, let me give a shout out here to Archangel. He is a top player in my region. He's in a top faction. I'm not even sure if this is his best team. This is probably up because he has, a medium drop leader here, and it's probably his best medium drop team he could put together. That's probably what I'll assume it is. But let's get into it and watch kind of what happens. As you see, he does have quality tunes in here, though, regardless of my theory on medium drop. He has Conrad there set up. He's got Hunter with that Indomitable that we were talking about, and he's got some quality blues in there with Hurt and Heal, Kenny, and Neutralizing Tyrese. So this isn't by no means a slouch of a team. It's a pretty quality team. At the very least, it's a good example of some higher end defensive teams. And as we start rolling through, you can see little bit of trouble here. A part of my outcomes does rely on the fact that I have a revive myself, and that things didn't get too terrible. But let's kind of see what happens. And there you have it. That's our outcome. Now, the question is, would Maggie have changed any of this? Or would she have drastically made us for sure know that she would have made this win a loss? And the tunes are going to be a little bit irrelevant. Again, you know, I'm not saying this is going to be every case. There are going to be, you know, certain cases of putting together a quality team, having the right tunes where she's gonna just make things that much worse for people that come up against them. But I'm talking about in general. And again, the tunes, they're gonna be a little bit irrelevant, not only because we're talking about big picture, but also because I'm going to paint a worst case scenario for the attacker. By that, I'm going to maximize the potential effects of Hemorrhage. Maggie is gonna have her best defense ever when we talk about this scenario. So let's assume a competitive team like this, it has a shield and it has a revive. All right, and Maggie's going to replace one of the other three. It's not going to matter too much. Again, you can paint a scenario where it does matter, but for the most part, let's not. Let me stress, I'm not saying there wouldn't be a better equipped team that would outperform this scenario. I'm simply trying to paint, you know, what an average encounter would be like. And again, I'm giving Maggie a best possible effect outcome. So let's get into it. Round one. I'm still going to basically start out the same. Here's my reasoning. I'm not going to kill Maggie first round. It's just not going to happen. So I'm not going to attack her because I don't want her AR to go off any sooner than it has to. Because I don't want her to have that bonus crit. Okay, I go ahead and attack Hunter because I also don't want to get a bunch of zeros from getting absolute defense proccing on me. And also, I kind of want Hunter to go off before anybody's dead. It helps me out if I can make his AR go off before it's going to do helpful effects. Again, there could be the argument having a character with command and proccing that up, or even to take Conrad out on the first turn with an Andrea and a command. But let's say we're just attacking sort of similar, and this is what I mean by worst case scenario. Maggie hits, and let's say, boom, it's a critical, somebody's bleeding. As far as we understand it, at the end of this turn, 150. Now, going into the next turn, you know, Conrad's still up, everybody's there. We got one bleeder. We're gonna attack on Conrad, get a couple of absolute procs there. No fun. Like we want, Hunter's AR is gonna go off. Everybody's still around. Now I do have ARs up, but I want to make the most of them, especially with Lee. I don't want to get any attacks and then have them heal up. So I'm gonna go ahead and just straight up boost these ARs again. But round two, you know, Maggie hits again, and boom, we have a second person bleeding. So not only is she proccing every time, she's gonna mix it up too. So now we have two bleeders, and at the end of this round, minus 300, minus 150, right? Probably hasn't killed anybody, more than likely. Even if she would have hit Lee, Lee would luckily have two hits left, right? Hasn't done anything different, but you know, she's done some bonus damage, right? Another round of attacks here to plus up all of our ARs. You see Lee ends up going down. That's because the ARs are starting to go off, and this is where it gets a little tricky, but stay with me. Remember, of these bottom three, we had to replace one with Maggie. And that means if you replace Larry, you're missing out on the extra damage from AoE, and he also does a attack debuff to our raid team, so they don't have that, won't have that. If it's Kenny, they don't have his healing capability, which means they have less energy now. If it's Tyrese, you're going to lose that line damage, and also they're going to have lower defense. They won't have the defense buff here, and that's going to be pretty important for the beginning of next round, as you'll see. So just remember that. Maggie's AR goes off. More than likely, we're going to get the same results, which is somebody's dead, and it's very likely that Maggie's AR is going to kill that person. And it kind of goes two ways here. You know, if Kenny's gone, you know, maybe she attacks Lee. If Kenny's not gone and Kenny kills Lee again, more than likely she hits front line as well, hits Krista. Krista still has tenacity, she stays in. And then the bleeding kicks in. I mean, we could assume that Lee had one, but again, let's try and paint worst case. So let's say that the other bleeders are out there. So we're going to lose two here. So now we're actually down a member lower than we were. But it gets really interesting here, because remember, they either don't have this health or they don't have this defense buff. We have Glenn ready to go off, which means we're going to come back up to 4. I think, you know, whether it's Lee or it's Krista, we're still going to get the results because they have less health, or they're going to lose more health here. If there's not quite enough to get them out of the way, still with Krista, we're going to impair the ones up top that we're worried about. And, you know, our other fast people just had their ARs go off, so we're just going to have basic attacks. Let's see kind of what the result would be. We also don't have any new bleeders because Maggie's AR went off, which means she's not going to have a chance to do crit. So at the end of this one, you know, Glenn would have brought us back up to 4. At the end of it, we're going to have a new death from the bleeding. That's going to kick us back down to 3, and it's going to be, you know, a newer character. It won't be Lee or Krista, whichever one came back. But we'll have 2 down. I think it's arguable whether or not Hunter will be alive now. You know, if Lee went off, I think we're actually going to kill Hunter. If Krista was the one that we brought back, I think he's going to at least still be impaired, but I think the lack of the health that he would have got from Kenny, or the lack of the defense that he would have got from Tyrese, is going to be gone, and we might actually be in a better position. It might be 3-3 at this point, but I'm going to go ahead and assume 3-4 still, kind of with an impaired Hunter, which would be worst case scenario, and we'll be moving on. You know, somebody got hit with a new bleed. 150 is not going to kill anybody that we just brought back. We will have the 900 die off. And I'm going to argue that we'll be in the same spot at the end of this round. You know, if we manage to get Hunter out of the way, we might even be a little bit ahead, and Larry might be gone. But more than likely, even if Hunter was just impaired, we still get to this spot of 3-3. And then I'm going to point out Glenn is ready to go off again. So from there, we're going to start in. Glenn's going to hit all 3 of them. He's going to bring somebody back, and you know, we'll work through the attacks, and we're kind of going to get the same result. The only thing that changes is it was a little closer this time. Now, I know there's a lot of potential what-ifs in there, but remember what we did here. I'm fighting against a tough fight to begin with. There's a chance that, you know, this is a borderline fight for me. It took me longer than a normal raid would. Also, we're assuming that Maggie was critting 100% of the time, and that she was rotating who she was hitting, which we know the computer more than likely isn't going to do. So her bleeding damage was having a lot greater effect than more than likely it's going to when ran by the computer AI. And that's the main point, that despite all these handicaps that we put on ourselves in the Maggie scenario, it's still arguable that we reach the same outcome. And I say arguable because, you know, you can definitely get in the comments and be like, well, if this would have happened, you wouldn't have got it through with all the bleeding. And then I would probably point out that if that same thing would have happened in the original, I wouldn't have won either, meaning that under the same circumstances, we would have got the same results too. And that's kind of the point. It's not a large enough skill that it's obvious that it gives you a huge advantage. I think for the most part, you're going to win ones that you're still going to win. You're going to lose ones you still would have lost. And maybe every now and then there's one where it makes the difference. But that's kind of how, I don't know, tenacity and parting shot are. They don't really give you a huge advantage, but every now and then they save your ass. What do you think about the new hemorrhage specialist skill? Do you think I'm not giving it enough credit? Do you think it's more powerful than I actually think it is? Am I missing ways in which you could optimize it? Hopefully I'll actually have an encounter with one and sort of be able to do an update video and actually give an example of differences with a team that has one. But I feel like this was a decent scenario where you had, arguably the best in class shield with arguably the best in class revive. My team wasn't optimized to take those two things out, and we still dealt with the bleeding. I feel like, again, arguably, we gave it a pretty good scenario, handicapped ourselves with sort of some of the best possibilities that Maggie could have. But let me hear your thoughts. As always, if you guys enjoy, please like. If you're new and you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.